It's your proverbial boy Jeffy, and today I want to share with you some footage from a live event that I did recently for my program Resonator, which is of course a program designed to help people cultivate powerful, healthy vocal projection. Now in this clip, we're going to be discussing Alexander technique, which is of course a postural technique that was developed in the late 1800s. Now posture is the beginning, it is the foundation of all healthy voice projection. So it's very, very important to cultivate this, not only for voice projection, but additionally for just overall confidence, the way you move through the world. So using these very, very simple techniques, and mind you, this is just a tip of the iceberg of Alexander technique, which I'll always recommend this to students of mine who have a slouched over, hunched over posture. Like I had a guy recently who was 6'2", and because of his hunched posture, I thought he was like my height. Simply because he's been conditioned from a variety of things over the years to just default to that posture. So when you engage with these techniques, which are very, very simple and can be done anywhere, even in spare moments, over time, this will help you develop a general better posture, and you'll feel more confident, you might feel taller, and generally it just feels like you're communicating with your entire being as opposed to from behind a blocked wall. So let's jump into the video. Before we do that though, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's check it out. You guys, do you follow Tyler on, YouTube? Yeah. Like Tyler, hey guys, yeah. Right? So if you listen to Tyler's voice, if you watch his Instagram stories, 9 times out of 10, he looks like he's about to pass out. His voice typically sounds quite hoarse and scratchy. And that's due to him pushing himself very hard. Oftentimes we're up on stage talking from like noon to like 9 p.m. and then straight out to the club for like a 16-hour day of screaming at people. So literally by the end of that weekend, I used to get in the cab to go to the airport on Sunday, and like the guy's like, where do you want to go? I don't know what accent that is, but I'm sure it's offensive to somebody. But he's like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, airport. Like I literally couldn't even speak. I'm like, airport. I'm like, fuck, dude. And I had to like pantomime an airplane, like, he's like, oh, I take you airport, right? And he would take me there. Literally, we come home, and like all the instructors have struggled with this. And we would come home and have to be on several days of enforced vocal rest, where we literally can't speak. I have a whiteboard, I'm like writing shit on it, like some sort of mute. And my girlfriend at the time, she would love this shit. She's like, this is fucking great. Normally this motherfucker never shuts up, now he's just like peace and quiet, I'm not saying that that's something that you guys are gonna deal with, like, because you're probably not putting your voice under that marathon stress. However, I'm sure that we've all felt a little hoarseness maybe at the end of the night, especially in a loud venue. If you've been out in Vegas, Miami, even the louder venues here. I'm sure, how many guys go to like Temple? That's a pretty loud environment, and you got to strain your voice to be heard. So this was kind of a near and dear thing to my heart. So I started to investigate why this was happening. And then secondly, I noticed a lot of times students would come up on boot camps and they would be saying the exact same shit I was saying. We'd like, okay, go say this. And they'd say it, and like when we said it, like myself, Julian, whoever, the girls would get we would get a good result. They'd be like laugh, they turn to us, they pay attention. These students go up, and often they're not even getting looked at. Like they're going up and they're like, hey, excuse me, and the girls just ignore, like full ignore. Like they're they're this thing, like a fucking chair, a piece of furniture, and just full ignore. And like that shit used to happen to me way back in the day, obviously, when I was first starting out. And I don't think there's any like worse rejection than that. Like even like go fuck yourself, midget, you suck, you're old, whatever, you're fat, you're old, you're dumb, you suck, your game is shit, like whatever. At least that they're acknowledging you as a human being. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, they're acknowledging your presence. This like treating you like a piece of furniture, it's quite dehumanizing. It's one of those things that if you get it enough, like guys are like, you know what, this shit is dumb, it doesn't work, I'm MGTOW now, I'm a man going my own way, pickup's bullshit, and it's quite sad. So I went to, so by the way, so when I had the idea for this program, I started kind of floating it around on my channel and around the boards and so forth. And people were like, well, this sounds like a good idea, but how the fuck are you, this is a joke, like how the fuck are you qualified to teach this shit? Like you're not a voice coach. So they were right. And so what I did is I paired up with Susan Nance, who's a vocal coach who lives here in San Francisco. I basically went through an extensive course with her, not for singing, because she does vocal coaching for singing, but I'm like, do you work for just like public speakers? She's like, yeah, I work with actors, I work with lawyers who have to be in court, giving, presentations and things like that to develop a strong vocal projection. Now, it was interesting because I have a pretty good vocal projection just normally, from it's self-taught, from two things. Number one, doing pickup, because as we all know, women will punish bad game ruthlessly. Like a lot of guys will say, how do I get to, like I had the student last weekend here in town, and he was like, he's like, I get the ideas. And he's a smart guy. This is one of those smart guys, like he actually understood the ideas. You'd say, do this, and he'd go up and do it, but he wasn't really comfortable acting in that milieu, I guess, of like being a more like outgoing person, a more aggressive person. And when I say aggressive, not in like a scary way, in like a fun and cool way. Like, hey, what's up? Damn girl, like, that kind of aggressive. He's like, I'm not like as loquacious as you, gregarious, whatever you want to fucking call it, outgoing. He's like, how did you get like that? I'm like, if you met me 12 years ago, 15 years ago, very different person. I could barely even get a word in edgewise. I'm in my peer group, stuff like that. He's like, well, how did you get that? I'm like, well, I went out a lot and I saw girls didn't react well to that. And I was like, well, I have to change, right? It's like saying, some guy who starts to learn boxing and he's like, I want to do this, but I just don't like to hit people in the face. That's just not me. It's like, well, that's what it is, motherfucker. If you want to be successful at it, you got to do that. So I had to learn to be more outgoing. I had to force myself to kind of adopt those behaviors until they became congruent and they became quote unquote me. So there's a combination of things. Like I said, I was self-taught in those two ways, but when I started going and learning the science behind loud vocal projection, powerful vocal projection, attractive, healthy vocal projection, it was interesting because a lot of the maps that I had invented in my head of how it looked, of how like the voice box works, of how noise is produced, how you do it in a healthy way, a lot of my ideas were right. The map I created, a lot of it was right, a lot of it was way off the mark. So it was pretty mind-blowing to me in a way to learn these things. And so I'm like, shit, you know what? This is something that I think a lot of people could learn, because I got really sick of dealing with this first on boot camps, right? Because it's like before if the guy can't even fucking talk, like how many guys have had this experience? You go up to the girl in the club and you're like, hey, blah, 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 open her. It might be like the funniest shit in the world, but then she goes, what? And you repeat it again louder. Every time, even today, a lot of times in the first couple sets of the night, I'll go up and I'll be like, hey, blah, 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 but it's just not quite loud enough. And she's like, what? I'm like, fuck. And at that point, I know I'm fucked. Like, no matter how good I am after that, it's probably fucked, because she had to ask what. Like I said, I got sick of teaching guys this stuff first. I just can't fucking hear you. Speak up, speak up. And oftentimes, it's interesting, because I'd be like opening the boot camp, and we're in like a hotel lobby, and we're like, hey, so tell me a little bit about yourself, name, age, occupation. And the guy's like, my name's Bill, and I'm a software engineer. And I'm like, speak up a little bit. I actually can't hear you. Okay, my name's Bill, and it's like 2 decibels higher. I'm like, you got to talk louder. It's like, my name's Bill, and I can't, right? I'm like, look, dude, if I can't hear you in this like tiny enclosed space, how the fuck are the girls gonna hear you in the club, right? So, and then of course they go up and they're getting blowouts. So this is why I cultivated this program. Now, like I said, I'm going to be slamming through this because we have a limited amount of time. We've got a couple hours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of the main principles, and this is stuff that you guys can employ tonight, go out and use tonight immediately after this, right? So I'm going to go over the principles, and then we'll be bringing guys up, and we'll work with you in real time actually to kind of start to fix some of these issues. Now, here's the benefits, right? The benefits that I got from it, I don't lose my voice anymore after those long weekends. I don't. It gets a little scratchy, but not to that point. We're going to go over it in basically 4 parts. There's 4 main components to this. Number 1 is the actual production of noise from your flapping fucking meat hole. Okay? The actual production of resonant, attractive, loud noise. Okay? That's number 1. And we're going to break that down into a couple subcategories. Number 2 is your actual vocal tonality that you're employing when you go up to the girl. So that's going to immediately affect her perception of you right off the bat. Number 3, the conviction with which you're saying this shit. And number 4, emotional variance. Like, are you going up and are you like, hey, how are you? It's like this emotional flat line. Anyone here from the Midwest originally? Yeah, I noticed a lot of guys like from back east in the Midwest, they tend to have that sort of flat effect. And it's really rough to get them to kind of shake out of that and be a little bit more expressive in a sense where even they're talking about mundane things, the girl will be interested in it simply by virtue of the enthusiasm with which you're saying this stuff. Okay, so with vocal projection, there's 5 main, I guess, pillars that build upon each other to kind of help you create the tone that we want. What do you think the very first one is? Well, the very first what is the foundation of vocal projection? Posture. What's that?
Posture.
Bang, posture, exactly. So that really kind of blew my mind because I thought, oh, it's like breath control, breathing from the diaphragm, something like this. But when I started working with this Susan person, who, by the way, you may have seen in the various videos, and I know what you're asking. No, I did not have sex with her. That was like the #1 comment on every YouTube. It was like, gilfhunters.com, bro. Like I was like, yes, no. But in any case, what Susan basically taught me in terms of posture was using something called Alexander technique to achieve a confident neutral posture. Okay, now when we say confident neutral posture, what is the opposite of a confident posture? It's like slouched, not taking up a lot of space in the environment, just kind of like, very inward. Right? Now, the polar opposite of that would be like an overly confident posture. So that's what most people think. They go from this, and now all of a sudden, they open it up, and it's kind of like this, like, this sort of like fucking Vince McMahon shit, like where they're like kind of just throwing it around. And by the way, like, has anyone ever here got laid and then gone back to the club? You went, you fucked, and you went back to the club. Okay, if you have, that's like, you actually walked like that congruently. So we don't want to like go to that exaggerated posture. We want a confident, neutral posture, and this is going to be the foundation of good vocal projection. Now, who in here has ever heard of Alexander technique? A couple people, a few people. Most people think of it as like a postural technique, but it was developed to fix a vocal problem. Now, quick backstory on Alexander technique. It was developed by a guy obviously called Alexander, and he was an Australian actor, like Mel Gibson. I don't know how anti-Semitic he was, but he was an Australian actor in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And he would do like Shakespearean monologues. That was kind of his bread and butter. And while delivering these loud monologues, obviously, back in the day, they did not have amplification. They didn't have electrical, systems to, a mic. So he would have to project very loud. And so what he found would happen is, he'd lose his voice at the end of these performances, right? And again, he was gripped by the same terror that we feel, like, holy shit, that's my bread and butter, I need to fix this shit. So he went to a variety of doctors. They're like, nothing's wrong with you. Your voice box, you're fine. So he started to think, maybe it's something that I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with me, like physically, but maybe it's something about my behavior, which for the time was kind of radical. Sort of radical thinking, because I don't know, they fucking put leeches on your asshole and shit like that back then, right? Medicine wasn't as advanced to think that maybe your behavior was causing these issues. So he stood in front of a mirror and he contorted himself, did different things, and what he eventually noticed is that he was what he called the primary control, which is where your head sits upon the top vertebrae of your neck, like your C1. It was down and like back, and his whole like shit was starting to like kind of crouch inward, and because he was holding stress not only in his neck but in his chest, his abs, his quads, and his ankles. So the first thing he did was release what he calls his primary control. So if you do that right now, like take your head and don't physically move it with the muscles, just kind of make it loose and move it with the finger, almost like the top of your head's on a swivel, right? And instead of keeping it down and back, he started to move it up and forward, almost like you're sniffing something on the air, right? Like pie cooking, or like some sticky icky, so to speak, right? And then he began to release all the other stressors, right? All the other, tension he was holding. So again, if you do this right now, release the tension in your stomach, your quads, your ankles, and just keep it like that, like sniffing something nice. Okay? So what do you think are a lot of things that cause this? What could cause this?
Stress.
Well, obviously, back in the day, in survival instinct, if some animal was stalking you or you saw like some frightening thing, you'd be like, like to become still in the hopes that it might not see you. Now, we're not being stalked by animals here unless you're like walking through the Tenderloin at 3 a.m. or some shit. But like, you know what I mean? There's some crackhead or something. But you know, we have a variety of other stresses. Work stress, you know, kids from a young age, heavy backpacks, you know, causing this physiological adaptation over time. Bills, work, et cetera, sitting, you know, at computer stations for long periods of time, things of that nature. So it's very important to start to develop awareness of this, right? And that was one thing that she drilled, is just develop awareness of this. So another thing, by the way, this is a big one, is this, you know, right? So this contributes to that posture, which locks in over time in your kinesthetic memory, and it just becomes habitual. Right? So by releasing the locking patterns, we're going to free up our postural reflexes. So what are some ways to practice doing this? So why don't we stand up real quick, and let's try this. So we're going to run through a couple of these. And these are really simple exercises. You can do them anywhere, right? And that's one thing that I've been doing in the wake of learning all this stuff. Just in my free time or in a spare moment, you know, when I'm like waiting in line at the airport or what have you, I'll just do this stuff. So first, unlock primary control. Go sniff something on the air, up and forward. Now, release the tension in your abs, like consciously. Quads, ankles. And now let's rock kind of back and forth, like forward, almost like you're going off a ski jump. And just back. And feel how it feels differently when you're actually loosened up. Okay? So now we're going to do a little game to lengthen out our spine. So what I want you to do is this. You're going to put your fingers down like this at your sides. Straight, fingers straight down, okay? Turn the palms forward like so. And now bring them up in front of you like that. Now this is almost going to be like a kind of a counterbalance. So you're going to go back on your heels a little bit, just a little slight amount. And then bring your fingers up to touch the tops of your shoulders. Now from there, we're going to raise our right hand straight up in the air as we bring the left elbow and arm down, okay? Like that. And now we're going to drop the right arm, and as you drop the right arm, feel that side of your back kind of lengthen out. And just kind of shake it out a little. Now let's do the other side. So fingers down, forward, up, kind of back on the heels a little bit. Touch the shoulders, left arm up. And now bring it down and loosen out the other side, like lengthen that out. So these are like, it's a little more loose now. Right? So now, just kind of feel how that feels. You can rock back and forth a little bit and feel how you're more loose. Your posture should be a little bit more neutral, a little bit more relaxed. So as you're walking around, now, you know, as I walk around, I feel like a lot more upright. You know what I mean? It's a lot more lined up. Okay? So have a seat. And here's another thing. When you're sitting in a chair, how many guys have like day jobs where they sit in a chair a lot? Yeah. So when you're sitting in a chair, in fact, let's do it right now. So sit on a little bit more on the edge of the chair, right? Now, you see, I'm like this, and if I'm at a workstation, a lot of times I'll be like, especially over long periods of time, if I was like editing videos or something like that. So instead, I'm sitting like this, rock forward kind of on your sit bones a little bit. Like kind of rock forward on that sit bones. You want to sit on the edge of the chair and rock forward. And this will kind of naturally cause your back to straighten out. And now, again, get your primary control loose. Get the head going. Sniff the air a little bit. And now think of like arrows kind of coming off the ends of your knees and releasing the stress, right? Now everything should be like more in line. You don't want it to be like this. This obviously looks extremely uncomfortable, like some sort of curve, right? Some like lordotic curve here. You just want it to be like everything kind of sat right on top of where it should be, right? So again, if you're sitting in chairs for long periods of time, from time to time, if you catch your posture slipping like that, consciously kind of rock back on those sit bones, release the tension, get your primary control loose, breathe it out, and kind of try to maintain that posture for as long as you can, right? Because again, as you do this, here's the biggest thing. The more that you adopt this stuff, the more that you're going to naturally walk and stand and sit this way in your daily life, right? So you don't have to think about it, right? So By the way, if also another thing, forgot about one thing. If you are in that seated position, you can also put your hands on the table in front of you and feel your spine lengthen out like that as well, right? So that's some different things that you can do. So again, you might feel taller, you might feel more confident, you might feel more grounded, your breathing is gonna be freer. When you interact with the girls, just walking up, you're gonna be speaking to them. It's like, when somebody's standing like that, it almost feels like you're interacting with the whole person, as opposed to some sort of blockage in between.
Yeah, yeah. Uncle Jeffy, dude.
You just sit down, shut the fuck up. Don't hit your fucking brother. You like it? How does it feel? You like that? Don't do this, don't do that. Sit down, shut up, blah, blah, blah. The other, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, 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 dumb. You're dumb, your clothes are stupid. You know, all this shit over years. The media, act this way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. You're gonna be shamed if you act this way. Now you go into the club and it's like, holy shit, do I look cool? Stay in my little zone, stay in my little box, don't express myself, stay within the strict parameters that I believe are going to protect me from the judgment of the group.